From Alma Angeles, we're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Here are tonight's news. Government security forces arrested an Indonesian woman believed to be a suicide bomber and two others in a law enforcement operation in Jolo, Sulu. Hurricane Delta makes landfall on the Louisiana coast, packing ferocious winds and a life-threatening storm surge, driving out residents still rebuilding from a devastating storm less than 2 months ago. And nuclear-armed North Korea appears to have held a giant military parade, according to Seoul, with Pyongyang's latest and most advanced weapons expected to have been on show in the coronavirus barricaded country's capital. First, an Indonesian woman suspected of planning a suicide bomb attack in the southern Philippines was arrested Saturday in a pre-dawn raid, according to the military. The arrest comes less than 2 months after a pair of female suicide bombers blew themselves up on Jolo Island in the Muslim-majority Sulu province, which killed 15 people and wounded 74 others. Security forces blamed the August 24 attack on the Abu Sayyaf militant group. The Indonesian woman was identified as Reski Fantasia Ruli and was the widow of an Indonesian militant killed in Sulu in August, according to the Joint Task Force for the Restive region in a statement. She is also believed to be the daughter of two suicide bombers who killed 21 people in an attack on a Catholic cathedral in Jolo early last year. A vest rigged with pipe bombs was seized along with other improvised explosive device components from the Jolo Island house that is believed to be owned by an Abu Sayyaf leader, according to the military. Ruli was detained along with two women who are married to members of the Abu Sayyaf. Nuclear-armed North Korea held a giant military parade Saturday, television images showed, with thousands of maskless troops defying the coronavirus threat, and Pyongyang expected to put on show its latest and most advanced weapons. Take a look. The widely anticipated display is part of commemorations of the 75th anniversary of the North's ruling Workers' Party. State broadcaster KCTV showed squadron after squadron of armed soldiers and armored vehicles lined up in the streets of Pyongyang, ready to march through Kim Il-sung Square in a nighttime display. None of the participants or the audience lined up in the stands were wearing masks, but there were far fewer citizens than usual on the square itself. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un told the audience of the military parade Saturday that he was grateful, quote, "Not a single person in the North had contracted the coronavirus that has swept the world since emerging in neighboring China." Pyongyang closed its borders in January to try to protect itself from the disease and regularly said it had no cases, but state media had shied away from such explicit statements in recent months, instead stressing the importance of prevention efforts. Kim also said North Korea will continue to bolster its military for self-defense and deterrence. Analysts expected a new submarine-launched ballistic missile or an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching the United States mainland to appear, maybe even one with multiple re-entry vehicle capabilities that could allow it to evade U.S. defense systems. Hurricane Delta made landfall on the Louisiana coast Friday evening, packing ferocious winds and a life-threatening storm surge and driving out residents still rebuilding from a devastating storm less than 2 months ago. Take a look. Now, Delta became the 10th named storm of the year to make U.S. landfall, according to a record. According to meteorologists, it roared ashore near Creole, Louisiana as a Category 2 storm on a scale of 5, with winds of up to 100 miles per hour or 155 kilometers per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. Damaging winds and a life-threatening storm surge continue over portions of southern Louisiana, according to the Miami-based center, adding that one monitoring site was reporting a storm surge of 8 feet above ground. Now, the storm, which the NHC said quickly weakened to a Category 1 as it moved inland, caused widespread power outages in the state. In Lake Charles, a city in southwest Louisiana that was hit hard by Hurricane Laura on August 20, the streets were deserted Friday as a steady rain fell ahead of Delta's arrival. The city is still in disarray from the more powerful Laura, which is a Category 4, and ripped roofs off houses and uprooted trees. Streets are still littered with debris. And staying in the U.S., President Trump said he was medication-free and revealed more details of his fight with COVID-19 in a televised interview aired on Friday, 1 week after he was hospitalized with the virus. Take a look. The president appeared on Fox's Tucker Carlson tonight for what the White House described as an on-air medical evaluation conducted remotely by Fox contributor Dr. Mark Siegel. Now, President Trump said, right now, I'm medication-free. I'm not taking any medications as of, probably 8 hours ago. Now, President Trump told Siegel it was unclear when the interview, which Carlson said was filmed by a White House camera crew, was taped. President Trump's doctors had previously said they have given him an aggressive cocktail of therapeutic drugs, including the steroid dexamethasone, usually associated with serious COVID-19 cases. President Trump also said he had been tested again for the virus. President Trump will give a public speech at the White House Saturday for the first time since testing positive for COVID-19 as he prepares a rapid return to the campaign trail just 3 weeks before the election. The 74-year-old commander-in-chief has also announced a Florida rally on Monday. After President Trump spent months mocking Joe Biden for staying at home during the pandemic, it is Biden who has barnstormed swing states this week. He visited Arizona Thursday and campaigned again Friday in Nevada. Now, President Trump won both states in 2016, but they are now narrowly tilting Democratic in polls. At a drive-in style event in Las Vegas, Biden slammed the president. Take a look.
Good luck. I'd make sure I wouldn't show up unless you had a mask and were distanced. I don't know yet. Look, I just read that the CDC was going to require masks on public transportation. 40,000 people a day are coming down with coronavirus, and the White House blocked it. What is the matter with this guy?
Polls show the former vice president leading heavily in key demographics, including women and the elderly, prompting analysts to talk increasingly of a possible landslide victory. President Trump's biggest liability, overwhelming public dissatisfaction over his handling of the pandemic, has returned as the headline issue of the campaign, thanks to his own infection. Now, adding to the pressure, Democrats who control the House of Representatives unveiled plans for a commission to investigate a president's fitness for the job, a move clearly meant to jab at the president. Despite the conspicuous timing of the unveiling, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi insisted that this is not about President Trump, who has been treated for COVID-19 for the past week and is desperate to return to campaigning. Pelosi introduced legislation that would create what she called a commission on presidential capacity to discharge the powers and duties of the office. Let's listen in.
The 25th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified in 1967 after the assassination of President Kennedy, with strong bipartisan support. Members of Congress have a duty to take all necessary action to preserve continuity of government and protect the stability and integrity of our democracy for the future. This is not about President Trump. He will face the judgment of the voters. But he shows the need for us to create a process for future presidents. The 25th Amendment creates a path for preserving stability if a president suffers a crippling physical or mental problem and is, unquote, in the amendment, unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office and transfers his powers. Specifically, Section 4 of the amendment empowers Congress to set up an independent body to confront such a crisis. A president's fitness for office must be determined by science and facts. This legislation applies to future presidents, but we are reminded of the necessity of action by the health of the current president.
And we're still following the developments of the coronavirus around the world. The Czech Republic was facing the prospect of a lockdown as the growth in COVID-19 cases in the EU member reached a fourth straight daily record, according to data released on Saturday. The health ministry said the country of 10.7 million people had 8,618 new cases on Friday, beating Thursday's record of 5.394 and bringing the total tally to 109,374 cases with 905 deaths. In comparison, neighboring Poland, with 38 million inhabitants, said Saturday it had registered 5,300 new cases over the last 24 hours, which was also a record. Friday's data from the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control showed that the Czech Republic recorded the fastest two-week growth per 100,000 inhabitants in the EU. And Spain's government declared a state of emergency and new partial lockdown for virus-hit Madrid on Friday after a court struck down previous measures in a sign of the difficult battles waged across a restriction-wary Europe. While full lockdowns in March and April were largely accepted, governments are facing increased resistance as they try to contain a second wave of coronavirus infections at the start of autumn. In Madrid, restrictions from the central government barring people from leaving the city except for work, school, or medical reasons have been loudly opposed by right-wing city authorities and were rejected by a regional court on Thursday. In response, Health Minister Salvador Illa said the socialist-led government would declare a state of emergency, giving it powers to reimpose the measures on 4.5 million people and around the capital. Illa said, quote, "Protecting the health of Madrid's people is absolutely essential." A senior official at the World Health Organization said governments should try to avoid massive lockdowns that are so punishing to communities, while recognizing that these are sometimes unavoidable. Let's listen in.
What we want to try and avoid, and sometimes it's unavoidable, we accept that. But what we want to try and avoid are these massive lockdowns that are so punishing to communities, to society, and to everything else. So we don't want to flip from, no cases, everything's open, a few cases, everything shuts down again, because that's exactly the sort of scenario that we want to try and avoid. What we really need to focus on is ensuring that as cases come back, and they will and do come back, and this virus is clearly showing that it's got a lot of life left in it, the vast majority of people in the world are still susceptible to the disease, and we need to make sure that we're also focusing not just on restrictive measures, but on the surveillance, on the testing, on the tracking, on community empowerment, on education, on everybody taking their responsibility, the community their responsibility, and the government their responsibility, and that we try in as much as possible to minimise the broader effects in society through large-scale, complete national shutdowns. This may be unavoidable where the disease has got out of control again, but we shouldn't accept that in every country the return of cases should be seen with an immediate return of the need for lockdown restrictions at a national level. There are many things that can be done between those 2 points, and we should make every effort to do so in order to keep our social, economic lives open, and particularly schools and other vital services. If you catch this disease in the early stages, and even not so early sometimes, as many countries like South Korea and Japan have seen, and you work hard on surveillance and cluster investigation and isolating cases and quarantining contacts and ensuring that we can break chains of transmission, even though many of the cases can be asymptomatic and sometimes it's hard to find them. But by focusing in on these symptomatic cases, by focusing in on shutting down those chains of transmission, you catch up. That's the problem. You start behind. And then, like in any race, the further you start behind, the harder it is to catch up. The closer you are to the finish line or the starting line when the race starts, the more chances you have to catch up. And then when you catch up, you can speed up. And the problem in many countries is they're getting caught behind the line and then they're not accelerating quickly enough. And then they're getting themselves into situations where the disease is very, very established and very, very intense. And then there are no options but to shut down and lock down in many situations, particularly at a municipality or a city level, because it becomes very, very hard to stop the virus unless you separate people from other people.
Deserted beaches, boarded up shops and shuttered hotels. Thailand's prime tourist hotspot of Phuket is all but empty as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And with high season approaching, there's no sign of a return by holidaymakers. Take a look.
บอสหนูเขาช่วยลูกน้องค่ะเพราะว่าลูกน้องตกงานไม่มีที่อยู่ไม่มีอะไรอย่างเงี้ยก็เลยช่วยให้ลูกน้องได้มีงานทำค่ะเพราะตอนนี้รายได้มันไม่ได้เยอะแต่แกเอาช่วยลูกน้องเพราะให้ลูกน้องอยู่ได้
เพิ่งมาเริ่มขายประมาณ 2-3 เดือนนี่ค่ะมาขายของเพราะว่าตอนแรกเราก็รอหวังว่ามันจะดีขึ้นแต่มันก็ไม่ดีขึ้นเราก็เลยพี่ก็เลยต้องเอาตัวรอด
We know the problems that we rely too much on the international tourism, and we are trying to balance. In the past, we have 30% domestic market and 70% of international market. We are trying to balance. Maybe in the near future, will be 50 and 50%.
Hundreds of people rallied against police brutality for a third day in Nigeria's economic hub of Lagos after a video of a man being allegedly killed by police went viral. Take a look.
SARS are being brutal in this country and it's not fair. Like, we don't have our rights.
So we are saying that they should end SARS. SARS is anti-robbery squad. We are not armed robbers. A situation where you will walk on the road and somebody will arrest you for no reason. SARS!
One protester and one police officer were killed on Thursday, while another sustained life-threatening injuries during a protest in the southern town of Ughelli, Hafiz Inua, according to Delta State Commissioner of Police, adding that 9 suspects had been arrested. Anger has been brewing on social media after a video went viral showing the alleged killing of a man by a police officer in Delta State, a video that authorities denied was real. The man who filmed the video was arrested, provoking even more anger. Nigeria's vice president denounced police violence when asked about the issue by reporters.
Why is talking about one budget?
Russia called the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan in Moscow in a bid to halt nearly 2 weeks of fighting. The flare-up over the Nagorno-Karabakh region is the worst in 25 years. But Armenia's prime minister says his country wants peace.
Готовы к возобновлению мирного процесса в соответствии с заявлениями, сделанными в последние несколько дней президентами и министрами иностранных дел стран сопредседателей Минской группы.
Renewed fighting over Karabakh, an ethnic Armenian region of Azerbaijan that broke from Baku's control in a devastating war in the early 1990s, has claimed some 400 lives and forced thousands of people from their homes. The heavy clashes erupted late last month, with both sides blaming the other. Armenia and Azerbaijan agreed on Saturday to a ceasefire and to begin substantive talks over the breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Speaking after 11 hours of Moscow-mediated talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the warring sides had agreed to a ceasefire from 12 hours to 12 hours on October 10 on humanitarian grounds. In other news, Britain has joined several Eastern European nations in withdrawing its ambassador from the strife-torn Belarus in protest at President Alexander Lukashenko's expulsion of diplomats from Poland and Lithuania. Take a look. In a tweet late Friday, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the UK condemns Belarus' decision to expel Polish-Lithuanian diplomats. Completely unjustified and will only isolate the Belarusian people. In solidarity, we are temporarily recalling our ambassador for consultations on the situation in Belarus, he said. The ambassadors of Lithuania and Poland were recalled on Monday after Minsk accused them of backing mass protests that have erupted against Lukashenko since a disputed election on August 9. Following a demand from Belarus, Poland and Lithuania recalled a further 35 diplomats on Friday. Romania, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Estonia and Latvia have all withdrawn their own ambassadors to Belarus. In late September, Britain and Canada became the first major nations to slap sanctions on Lukashenko over the former Soviet Republic's political crisis. They imposed sanctions on Lukashenko, his son, and senior regime figures for a string of alleged human rights violations. Back to the U.S. In Hawaii, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, participated in an online interview hosted by Hawaii's Lieutenant Governor Josh Green. They discussed a wide range of topics from reopening the economy to addressing challenges that are unique to the Aloha State. Mio Asenas from our Hawaii Bureau has more.
Earlier today, Dr. Anthony Fauci repeated some updated guidance on just how deadly the coronavirus can still be, even when the necessary precautions are already being taken.
When you say aerosol, that means that these respiratory particles, they don't immediately go to the ground. They have the capability of floating around anywhere from many seconds to minutes, or maybe even longer, which means that being just 6 feet away isn't necessarily the total protection. You've got to wear a mask, number one, and you've got to remember that if you're indoors, it is much more difficult to escape infection when there's aerosol spread because it continues to recirculate. If I'm in this room and there's no really good circulation in and out, you can have that droplet that go around for several minutes. So just being 6 feet apart is not going to help you. And there's been demonstrations of people in restaurants who are sitting way distance from somebody on the other end of the restaurant. One person is infected, and then you wind up, this person who never came near that person winds up getting infected, which tells you, underscores the two things that I've been telling you. One, wear a mask. Number two, outdoors always better than indoors. And if you're going to be indoors, keep the windows open.
Dr. Fauci also shared some troubling statistics on those that may be infected with COVID-19, but are not experiencing symptoms.
It is estimated that between 40 and 45% of the people who are infected do not have symptoms. That is a substantial proportion, particularly when you do the modeling you can estimate that, again, a substantial proportion of the infections that occur are from an asymptomatic infected person to an uninfected person. So if that large a percentage is asymptomatic, you have a big problem in identifying when you have community spread about who is spreading the infection around.
The 79-year-old Brooklyn native even acknowledged Hawaii's challenges in enforcing safety measures, especially social distancing and going on quarantine if infected.
I could almost feel how frustrating that must be, because you're not going to change the way people have lived for forever, you know, a traditional way that families and communities live. So the best thing that you can do is to try and prevent the community spread to get high enough that would make those, you know, multi-generational 20-plus members in a single household, you know, you don't want to just throw them out of the house. I mean, they've got to live the way they're going to live. So you really want to try as best you can to keep the infection away. It's almost like protecting the vulnerable. And I would imagine that there would be a substantial proportion of the people in that multi-generational home that are in the elderly class and are having underlying comorbidities. I mean, it almost has to be by statistics alone, because you're going to have grandma and grandpa and maybe even great-grandma and great-grandpa in that home.
The two doctors also talked about Hawaii's plans to allow pre-travel testing, as well as balancing priorities in enforcing safety precautions while also reopening the economy.
So a 14-day quarantine in a location that depends on tourism is a real tough one, because most people have 2 weeks of vacation. They don't want to spend it locked up in a hotel, no matter how beautiful the hotel is. So what I would do is I would do something, but it doesn't necessarily mean 14 days. In other words, I can understand the anxiety of people on the island saying, you know, if you just do a test 72 hours earlier and that's all you do, that's not going to be enough. I mean, you're just anxious. But again, you don't want to go and quarantine everybody. That would hurt the tourism business. But you mentioned 2 or 3 things that are worthwhile. You can either get the really cheap, rapid, not that sensitive test and test everybody that comes through quickly, bango, and not like a really expensive, total amplification PCR. You're not going to get everybody, but statistically, you're going to dramatically diminish the likelihood that an infected person enters. Or you can do what you suggest, surveillance. Don't test everybody, but pick out representative ones to see what's coming into the country, and special attention to people that might have been at greater risk, like college students coming back from hot areas.
Finally, Dr. Fauci shared the latest in the government's efforts in developing a vaccine against the virus.
The United States government has made major investments in 6 vaccine candidates, 5 of which are already in advanced phase 3 trial. We have a safe and effective vaccine by November or December. The reality is, no matter what you do, there are going to be infected people who slip through the cracks. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. The critical issue is that since you have such a low level of infection right now, that you should be able to handle that and prevent that from blipping up. I mean, you've got to be able to prevent that from happening.
Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Mila Sanas for Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Mio. The Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to the World Food Program on Friday for feeding millions of people from Yemen to North Korea, as the coronavirus pandemic pushes millions more into hunger. The Nobel Committee said it wished to turn the eyes of the world towards the millions of people who suffer from or face the threat of hunger. Take a look.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2020 to the World Food Programme for its efforts to combat hunger.
I mean, this is the first time in my life I've been speechless. I mean, this is unbelievable. Talk about the most exciting point in time in your life is the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's because of the WFP family. They're out there in the most difficult, complex places in the world, whether it's war, conflict, climate extremes, it doesn't matter. They're out there, and they deserve this award, and wow, 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 wow.
We probably deserve it. We will find a way to celebrate. But in that celebration, we'll also take a few moments to recognize, thank you for recognizing what we've done.
In other news, foreign diplomats won over the Hut City Council officials during a football tournament there. To tell us more about it, here's Greg Bessa.
The Hut City Community Football Tournament is a way of celebrating while promoting unity amidst cultural diversity in Hut City, also known as the City of Lower Hutt. This beautiful and inclusive city is the 7th largest city in New Zealand and a home of peoples from various cultural backgrounds. One of the highlights of this year's tournament is the game between foreign diplomats and Hut City Council officials. Officially known as Lower Hutt Multicultural Tournament, this annual football event highlights the diversity of culture in the city by encouraging communities from various cultural backgrounds to participate and play football, one of the popular recreation sports in New Zealand. It is mainly hosted by the Hutt Multicultural Council in partnership with the Hutt City Council, Philoros Trust and Sports Zone, and Dominos Pizza.
We have been organizing this tournament for the last 6 years. This is the 7th year. We are organizing this as actually sports is a culture, and our aim is to promote different culture in the Lower Hutt or in Wellington region.
This year's football tournament was held under COVID-19 Alert Level 1, wherein there were no size limits on attendance and physical distancing required. And for the first time since beginning in 2017, the tournament included a friendly game between foreign diplomats based in Wellington region and Hut City Council officials. Philippine Ambassador Jesus Domingo initiated the organizing of the diplomatic team named as the Wellington Diplomatic Corps Football Club, which is composed of diplomats from Cuba, France, Hungary, Malaysia, Peru, Saudi Arabia, Solomon Islands, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam. All team members, along with Ambassador Domingo, who acted as a team manager, expressed their excitement to play in the tournament.
We finally have it here, a friendly match with Hut City Council here on October 4. So, well, we were able to do 2 rounds of practice, so it's all for fun. And ultimately, our job as diplomats is to build stronger relations with our host country. And football is all about diplomacy, building great relations among people, among communities. So I can't think of a more, well, this is a really great way to really strengthen our relations between New Zealand and our respective countries.
They have to win because this is our first official match as the diplomatic corps team in Wellington, so it's an obligation to win our first match.
Lovely that we could get together and enjoy a football match, and it's been a long time I haven't played, but I take a chance and it's good.
I'm very happy to participate in Lower Hutt Council's event here, just first to exercise and also get to know with the locals here, so very good to involve the diplomatic corps.
On the other hand, the Hut City Council team included Mayor Campbell Barry, city councillors, and other officials. The mayor himself was also thrilled to play the game against the diplomatic team.
Oh, it's great to be here on the Hut Rec today, here in Lower Hutt, on a beautiful sunny afternoon, and yeah, it's fantastic. Looking forward to getting out on the field with the Hut City Council team against the Ambassadors, and it should be a good clash.
As both teams played with their hearts out, it was evident that members of the Wellington Diplomatic Corps Football Club have more experience in playing the game. After several minutes of running, dribbling, hustling, and scoring, the diplomatic team won the game resoundingly. The trophy for the winning team was sponsored by the Embassy of Nepal in Australia and the non-resident Nepali Association in New Zealand. But at the end of the day, the game was not only about winning. After all, it fostered friendship and camaraderie between and among members of the Diplomatic and Hutt City Council football teams.
From the Hutt Recreational Ground in Lower Hutt, this is Greg Bessa of Eagle News New Zealand Bureau. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Greg. Eagle News will be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva said the global economic downturn caused by the coronavirus pandemic will be less severe than originally feared. But in a virtual event hosted by the London School of Economics to celebrate its 125th anniversary, she, however, said all countries are still facing the long ascent, a difficult climb that will be long, uneven, and uncertain. Take a look.
The IMF in June projected a severe global GDP contraction in 2020. The picture today is less dire. We now estimate that the second quarter downturn was somewhat less severe than expected, allowing for a small upward revision in our global forecast for 2020. And we will continue to project for 2021, a painful and uneven recovery. Risks remain high, including from rising bankruptcies and sketched valuations in financial markets. And many countries have become more vulnerable. Their debt levels have increased because of their fiscal response to the crisis and the heavy output and revenue losses. We estimate that global public debt will reach a record high of about 100% of GDP in 2020. Where the pandemic persists, it is critical to maintain lifelines across the economy to firms and to workers, such as tax deferrals, credit guarantees, cash transfers, wage subsidies. Equally important is continued monetary accommodation and liquidity measures to ensure the flow of credit, especially to small and medium-sized firms, supporting jobs and supporting financial stability. Cut the lifelines too soon, and the long ascent becomes a precipitous fall.
Meanwhile, the World Trade Organization likewise said that the devastation of global trade during the pandemic will not be as bad as originally forecast, contracting, though, by just 9.2% this year rather than the 12.9%. Again, let's listen in.
WTO is now projecting a 9.2% fall in the volume of world merchandise trade in 2020. Followed by a 7.2% rise in 2021, leaving trade well below its pre-pandemic trend.
Global merchandise trade decline recorded in the second quarter
of 14.3% is the largest quarter-on-quarter drop recorded in our time series going back to 2005. So this was a very sharp decline in trade.
We think there's reason for optimism on the trade front with a smaller than expected decline. Fall and winter holds a lot of uncertainty. Asian exports have been strong, but for those exports to be sustained, you need strong demand in the importing countries such as the US and EU. But we don't know how strong consumption demand will remain should the virus resurge and should governments not be able to continue sustained fiscal support.
The WTO said that rapid deployment of an effective vaccine against the virus could boost confidence and raise output growth by 1 to 2 percentage points in 2021. The coronavirus pandemic has forever changed the way consumers shop online, according to the UN Trade and Development Body, UNCTAD. In a study of thousands of people in 9 countries, UN researchers said that more than half reported they now opt to shop digitally more than before the health crisis. The greatest shift to online shopping has happened in emerging economies, according to the survey, which examined purchasing power in Brazil, China, Germany, Italy, the Republic of Korea, Russia, South Africa, Switzerland, and Turkey. Most product categories saw increased virtual sales of between 6 and 10%. The biggest gains were in information and communications technology and electronics, followed by gardening, do-it-yourself items, and pharmaceuticals. Despite the busier virtual cash registers, the UNCTAD survey also revealed that average monthly expenditure per person has dropped significantly. It's believed that this is because people everywhere have postponed larger purchases, with spending on tourism and travel down some 75% since before COVID-19. Software giant Microsoft will let employees work from home permanently if they choose to, according to U.S. media on Friday, becoming the latest employer to expand work-from-home provisions prompted by the pandemic. U.S. tech news website The Verge said most Microsoft employees are still at home as the health crisis drags on, and the company doesn't expect to reopen its U.S. offices until January of next year at the earliest. But when it does, workers can choose to work from home permanently with their manager's approval, although they will have to give up their office space. The COVID-19 pandemic has challenged all of us to think, live, and work in new ways, according to Human Resources head Kathleen Hogan in a note to employees obtained by The Verge. She said, quote, "We will offer as much flexibility as possible to support individual work styles while balancing business needs and ensuring we live our culture," unquote. The Verge reported some employees won't be eligible for remote work arrangements, such as those who work in Microsoft's labs or train other employees. In its memo, the company co-founded by Bill Gates said it's possible for its workers to relocate across the U.S. or perhaps overseas, according to The Verge. Now, those that relocate may see their salaries change depending on where they go, and while the company will cover expenses for employees' home offices, it won't cover relocation expenses. As of the end of June, Microsoft employed 163,000 people, 96,000 of them in the U.S., according to a securities filing. During a diplomatic trip to Ireland, EU Council President Charles Michel said that Britain and the EU have reached the moment of truth in Brexit trade talks. Talks are stalled ahead of a looming October 15 deadline issued by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Rowana Rino reports.
One moment. EU Council President Charles Michel arrives in Dublin for talks with Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin. Charles Michel says that Britain and the EU have reached the moment of truth in Brexit trade talks. Talks are stalled ahead of a looming 15th of October deadline issued by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Let's hear what they said in a recent press conference.
As in any such negotiation, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. The coming days are crucial. This is the moment of truth. My message is simple. The EU stands in full solidarity with Ireland. And this is especially true when it comes to the full implementation of the withdrawal agreement and the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland.
The situation remains very challenging. There needs to be movement in terms of getting into end-stage negotiations, and we feel there's a lot of work to be done yet on a number of fronts.
Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin said he has seen a positive shift in post-Brexit trade talks between Britain and the European Union, but warned London must make concessions as the deadline looms. He was speaking after meeting European Council President Charles Michel, who himself warned of a moment of truth as both sides raced to make progress before a summit of EU leaders in 1 week's time. The mood appears to have changed, and there's been more intensified engagement, Martin told a joint press conference in Dublin. But mood is one thing. It does not need a substance to follow the mood. One needs concrete outcomes from the negotiations, and positions need to change. The Taoiseach, Michel, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen have all spoken to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson in recent days. Johnson has marked down the Brussels summit starting on October 15 as his deadline for a clear signal that the EU is willing to do a deal. Negotiations between the EU and UK will take place until the date, and most likely later, with Brussels still hoping to come up with the outline of a deal by the end of the month. The coming days are crucial. This is a moment of truth, Michel said. He called for significant steps to be made by our British friends in the coming days on EU access to UK fishing waters, common standards, and governance mechanism of any final deal. The UK must also implement the Brexit divorce treaty signed before it left the bloc in January, he stressed, amid a row over London's attempts to rewrite sections relating to Northern Ireland. I'm Rowana Bianca Arino, correspondent in the Republic of Ireland, and we live in interesting times.
A push to downgrade the EU's attendance at next month's G20 summit in Riyadh over human rights concerns marks another setback for Saudi plans to host a coming-out party on the world stage. Take a look. The European Parliament passed a wide-ranging resolution on Thursday calling for the European Union, or EU, and its member states to downgrade their representation at the virtual summit in order to avoid legitimizing impunity for human rights violations and ongoing illegal and arbitrary detentions in Saudi Arabia. The resolution, which coincides with the 2-year anniversary of the brutal murder in Istanbul of journalist Jamal Khashoggi by Saudi agents, sends what a source at the parliament called a strong political message to the kingdom. The resolution implies the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, will not attend the summit if they heed the call of lawmakers, according to the source. The Saudi government has a long record of silencing the very voices that are necessary for a meaningful global conversation regarding the challenges we collectively face, which challenges the appropriateness of their hosting the 2020 G20 summit, according to the document addressed to Michel and von der Leyen. We should not legitimize a government committing egregious human rights violation as host of one of the most important summit meetings in the world, it said. Now, Saudi authorities did not immediately respond to AFP's request for comment. And we're still following the developments out of the U.S. on Hurricane Delta. Take a look. Now, Hurricane Delta, now a Category 1 storm, made landfall near Creole, Louisiana on Friday evening. It ripped through Lake Charles, Louisiana, leaving houses destroyed in its wake. Now, the city was still recovering from Hurricane Laura, which struck less than 2 months ago on August 20. Hurricane Delta, now a Category 1 storm, made landfall near Creole, Louisiana on Friday evening. As said, more than 11 million people is in the storm's path. More than 350,000 people are experiencing power outages in Louisiana, according to poweroutage.us. The hurricane barreled into the Gulf Coast as a Category 2 storm, but weakened to a Category 1 about an hour later. And forecasters are still warning of a life-threatening surge of seawater in some areas. Our EBC correspondent Cristel Mapa went around Bangkok's farmers market to get a glimpse of life and how business within is during the new normal. Cristel Mapa reports.
When was the last time you volunteered for someone or volunteered for your community? Come with me as I volunteer today in Bangkok Farmers Market. Bangkok Farmers Market is a developing community that aims to directly connect farmers or small businesses to consumers. It started in 2013 and continues to be a venue of local businesses. It's a weekend market which can easily be reached via SkyTrain station outside a famous mall in Bangkok. This market offers diverse foods that cater to every person's dietary needs. One of the pioneers is Doris, who has a coffee plantation in Chiang Rai. She's been living in Thailand for 50 years and has been making products from her farm.
I'm Doris, and we have a plantation, a coffee plantation in Chiang Rai. Yes.
North Thailand.
Very far north.
Yes.
And we started out planting coffee.
Wow.
But there are a lot of trees, fruit trees that shade the coffee.
Yeah.
And they started giving us a lot of fruit. So we started drying fruit, making jam, making washing liquid from sour fruit that we have on the plantation. And something that nobody else does is make a tea from the leaf of the coffee plant. And I enjoy coming to the Bangkok Farmers Market, which is a group of vendors who make their own products. And I've been with them for about 8 years.
Oh, since the beginning?
Since the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's a very nice group of people. And I enjoy meeting people from abroad, Thai, yes, to have
So we focus to help small producers, small farmers, and before, right, when we start, Thailand, not many people do organic. Even me, I don't know about organic, I don't know how to say, right? And it's quite difficult to find organic products in Thailand. And have a financial friend, enjoy food, support farmers here at the Bangkok Farmers Market.
Hi, I'm Marianne and I'm here at the Bangkok Farmers Market. I'm actually from Malaysia. I started about a month ago and we started out like cooking free breakfast for everyone that came to the market. It's really popular and everyone loves of course everyone loves getting free food. Yeah. And I get to like test my scrambled egg making skills on people. And then no choice just to tell me it's nice as well. So far it's been quite good. We helped set up this place over here for free water. Okay. So you can come over here, it's hot, so we actually provide free water and we've been helping out with a few vendors, like featuring them on our social media platform. Oh, Bangkok Farmers Market is so conveniently located for one, so you have no excuse not to know how to get here. It's right next to the Ikamai BTS, and just come out and you have access to all these local vendors, and they're selling like the best, most organic, I don't even know whether that's a word, most organic, but yes, they're organic produced, no sugar, so it's all guilt-free whenever you put something into your stomach.
Hi, I'm Lynn, I'm from Taiwan. I moved to Bangkok about 1 year ago. I think Bangkok Farmers Market is unique because I lived in US for a while and US is already a very mature market for farmers market, like it's a thing in the US. Okay. But in Asia it's not so popular yet. In Taiwan I barely see any farmers market actually. So when I found farmers market in Bangkok, I think it's a good way to promote local produce products as well as building local community. I think it's a very interesting experience. You get to taste a lot of organic food, of course. You get to see a lot of local producers, a lot of handmade stuff, homemade stuff. I also also get to see the local community and expats community who are interested in community building and organic food.
What was your favorite food?
Today I like the quiche that I tried.
I like it too. Okay.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm from Bangkok. So it's my first time to volunteer at the Bangkok Farmers Market. I think it's a great opportunity to get to know like other volunteers that have a common interest, and it's for a really good cause. Well, I wanted to support a community where the health would really make an impact, and I felt it's still a growing community, so there's definitely something that I can contribute. I think the greatest part is that every food that you can try here is really genuine. It's really authentic. There's no guilt because most of the things do not have sugar, so it's really natural, very healthy, and there's really a variety of products that you can try here. Okay, so if you live in Bangkok, please do come and visit us at the Bangkok Farmers Market. It's a very authentic experience to be here. You will get to communicate with the local communities that provide organic products. It's very close to the BTS, so it's super convenient. You do not need to take the car. Yeah, it's just to have fun and to enjoy a lot of good food. Yeah.
Reporting from Bangkok Farmers Market, I am Crystal Napa.
In NBA action, Jimmy Butler put the Miami Heat on his back in the final minutes and refused to let their championship dreams die, outdueling LeBron James down the stretch in the NBA Finals, playing to the point of exhaustion and beyond. Butler scored 35 points, grabbed 12 rebounds, passed off 11 assists, and made 5 steals in Miami's 111-108 victory Friday over the Los Angeles Lakers, pulling within 3-2 in the best-of-7 series. Take a look.
To it, I thought our just competitive spirit throughout the course of the game, was great. And sometimes it's make or miss, and sometimes you need to be a little bit fortunate. We were, but we also made a lot of plays. Particularly on the other end, Jimmy again, his will to win is remarkable.
I left it all out there on the floor, along with my guys, and that's how we're gonna have to play from here on out. Like I always say, it's win to win for us. But this is the position that we're in. We like it this way. We got 2 more in a row to get.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, you don't predetermine anything, and you take the game as it's going. And then you play each quarter, you play each possession, and you live with the results. You don't think about what could happen at the end of the game and things of that nature. You don't get caught up in the aftermath. You have to live in the moment and prepare yourself each and every possession. Because if you start to wander and your mind starts to go, you make a mistake. And one thing about this team that we're playing, they make you pay for every mistake. Throughout the highs, throughout the lows, you stay even keel and get better with the process. And you stay in the moment, which I am, and understanding that we could be better. And how we make the adjustments and how we learn from tonight, tomorrow in our film session, and when we get together and prepare ourselves for Sunday, we'll show the difference.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely bounce back. There's no question about that. It's a tough loss. There's no doubt about it. We were very close. I felt 2 bad calls at the end, put Butler to the line. And that's unfortunate in a game of this magnitude. Anthony Davis has a perfect verticality. Okay, it should be a play on. And the time before that, Markieff Morris has his hand on the ball. That should be a play on. Okay, they would give him 4 free throws and make it uphill battle for us.
Butler shot 11 of 19 from the floor and 12 of 12 from the free throw line in a game-high 47 minutes for a Miami squad that used only 7 players. The wary playmaker slumped on an advertisement board beyond the end of the court before hitting the free throws that put the Heat ahead to stay with 16.8 seconds remaining. Butler traded scores with 4-time NBA Most Valuable Player James on 6 straight possessions in the final 2 minutes, carrying Miami just far enough to force a Game 6 on Sunday. And in time of physical and emotional distance, we give importance to the unsung service delivered by our frontliners. Our news correspondents positioned all over the world. Without them, we would not have the Eagle